So this is a very curious turn of events, I think, to have the minister, the deputy minister of justice, legal counsel, right, a public servant, providing a legal opinion on behalf of the government of Canada that invokes constitutional principles that are foreign. They're absolutely foreign to the Canadian parliamentary system of government. It's bizarre. But I don't think it's out of place. For this reason, I think that, although I have no evidence of this, that the Ministry of Justice is taking direction directly from the Prime Minister's office, but I do think that this is a piece of a larger program to alter Canada's constitutional system from sort of the system of parliamentary democracy that's inherited from Great Britain to something that's more US presidential style. And I have all kinds of evidence about this. I'll just point to two things. Senate reform, again, boring a leaf right out of the US Constitution. Confirmation of judges, again, Senate advises and consents in the United States, and that's the process that Harper wants to introduce here. And there were other pieces of evidence about this. So I think this is part of a piece of the Americanization of Canada's constitutional system. And I should add, by way of footnote, I certainly have no objection to changing Canada's constitutional architecture. I just think we should do it in an informed, intelligent, and deliberative way, rather than in a secretive way that mimics one of the most dysfunctional constitutional systems in the world, by any measure, maybe short of Italy's. One of the most defective constitutional systems in the world that we're mimicking, sort of, and moving slowly towards. Okay. What the dispute really boils down to, and this is what I wrote about in the Globe and Mail, and I've been doing some radio interviews about, is that this is actually an older dispute that the lawyers here are not really talking about. And that's the one between Crown and Parliament, between the royal prerogative and parliamentary privilege. So let me talk first about royal prerogative. This is old constitutional common law, okay? The prerogatives of the Crown are the realm of unfettered discretion that ran the machinery of government early on in England's constitutional history. It's an area of discretion that has been described as impossible to define, which is a bit of a challenge in a constitutional democracy. But it's been whittled away over time, without question. It's been whittled away over time by statute and by practice, or what we call convention, to only a handful of things. And those handful of things, interestingly, are very important. They are matters reserved for the Governor General acting on the advice of the Prime Minister. What's that? Prorogation and dissolution. Okay. Those are matters reserved for the Governor General that are part of that royal prerogative. And the other things that haven't been whittled away by statute have to do with things like foreign affairs, treaty making, diplomacy, deployment of armed forces, the making of war and peace, or what Littleton called those matters that are too dangerous, right, to be communicated to the people. Those types of things reside within the realm of the royal prerogative. And those are the things, interestingly, not exercised by the Governor General any longer. Of course, the monarch doesn't exercise this personal control over the prerogatives outside of dissolution and prorogation. Okay? These other matters, where do they reside? Within cabinet. And who concentrates cabinet power? The Prime Minister's office, right? This is a key explanation for the concentration of power in the Prime Minister's office. And of course, among cabinet colleagues, to the extent that the Prime Minister is willing to, delegate matters to these less able people, so it seems, in the Harper cabinet. So there it is, right? There's one of the key explanations for the concentration of power in the Prime Minister's office. Not anything, of course, that originated with Harper, but has been developed into a fine art. Right? I think it's fair to say. Why Jeffrey Simpson would call Jean Chrétien's prime ministership the friendly dictatorship, right? Because of the concentration of that prerogative power. In addition, of course, to other power, not exclusively, but it's a large conglomeration of authority. One might say that the Harper government has given rise to an unfriendly dictatorship. Okay. So there are these prerogatives. Are they absolute? Are we back in the 17th century? Do we have to behead the Prime Minister in order to retrieve those? No. Yeah, no, we don't need to. I'm not advocating violence.
Absolutely.
No, I wouldn't want to advocate that. No, there's actually a solution. And this is what I'm advocating to anybody who's willing to listen. And that is, Parliament can act, right? Without question, prerogatives of the Crown, right, have been whittled away, taken away, abolished, limited, right? There might be just limited, there might be a residue of power available in the Crown of the Prime Minister. But there's no question that Parliament has the capacity to take those prerogatives, democratize them, make them transparent and accountable. That's what Parliament can do. I take inspiration from a 19th century conservative constitutional lawyer named Albert Van Dicey. Okay, this is what Dicey writes in 1885. He says, no modern lawyer, this is the 19th century, no modern lawyer would maintain that these powers, these prerogative powers, or any other branch of royal authority could not be regulated or abolished by Act of Parliament. And he describes how the royal prerogatives have been built up, and the conventions around their use have been built up around the purpose of ensuring the supremacy of the House of Commons. They are not about preserving power for its own sake. This is, again, the conservative constitutional theorist in the 19th century. It's not about preserving power for its own sake, but serving the needs and demands of the House of Commons, the People's House, as expressed through their representatives, of which, of course, the Prime Minister remains a member, right, rather than an executive. Now, the privileges of Parliament, the opposition argues, will trump the prerogatives of the Crown. This is the fight, right? Parliamentary privilege versus prerogatives, the royal prerogative. The parliamentary privilege to compel the production of documents regarding Afghan detainee abuse, and the insistence on refusing to disclose those documents on the basis that they lie within the realm of executive discretion. But according to my analysis, and I think the Minister of Justice has come around to this view, is actually using the language of royal prerogative finally in his speech last Thursday. This is the fight, right? This is the terms and terrain of the debate. Now, it might seem sound from a constitutional point of view. My first intuition was to develop an argument about why the House of Commons, by motion, should be able to trump the royal prerogative. After all, the prerogative is subservient to the needs of the people, is represented by the House, and boom, that's the end of the story. Shouldn't be complicated. Problem